Lemon ice box pie. Clem Winderweedle, prospector, climbed into his old Hudson pickup on the morning of the 23rd of June, 1965. Warm, dry, and dusty was the usual weather in early summer in Tuscarora, Nevada. The old town had barely clung to life since its glory days early in the 20th century. The dirt streets revealed nothing of its acclaim as a gold and silver boom town. You can look out and almost see the quiet and maybe a lingering ghost or two. The hills still had caves of where some of the Chinese miners once lived, and a few old mining shacks still hung on to life. There was nothing left of the once thriving businesses but the old post office. Crusty old Clem disrupted the tranquility of the old town when he rocketed his rickety old Hudson into nearby Teaselwood Canyon Tavern. The wooded circular hollow spot was particularly wild and impressive, surrounded on three sides by precipitous riverbanks, sloped gently toward the crest of Wheeler Mountain that overlooked the valley. Clem was joined by fellow Tuscarora residents Joe Selensky and Louis Morcella, sitting in their customary seats. He strolled into the tavern for a traditional evening of beer and solving world problems. Much repeated stories were being told, like the one about Joe Selensky's Uncle Abe. He published a weekly paper in the town of Rodeback, 40 miles down the river. Joe bragged that he always was privy to the latest gossip. They swapped yarns about Joe's Uncle Abe and how he had captured Lester DeVries using a fake gun. DeVries had been wanted for 4 years. The latest addition to their collection of stories was about this uncle. It seemed just after he had went to his office last week, his window had been shattered and his office looted. It was the greatest excitement in Rodeback in years, probably since the days when it was an outpost of the wild and woolly West. Because of this crime, the honor of keeping the peace and quiet in the town went to Uncle Abe as he was sworn in as a newly designated deputy sheriff. Teaselwood Canyon Tavern boasted of being in the middle of the premier hunting and fishing in the state. But it is best known by the locals of northern Nevada for its pie, and especially for their lemon ice box pie. Clem said this with his head cocked to one side. "Give me a cup of that great coffee, and I'll have a slice of that lemon pie, please. That delicious pie is so hard to describe. The flavor just will simply tell the whole story. A spasm of sumptuous reaction that melts in your mouth." Clem Winderweedle, as a Mormon, didn't drink beer, but always enjoyed coffee with his lemon ice box. He paid no heed to the church's view on coffee. Joe adds, "I like that pie, too. It's not like most syrupy pies. That creamy lemon mousse topped with toasted marshmallow cream meringue melts in your mouth. But it just doesn't go well with beer." Mr. Biegler Schumbach, the proprietor and master baker, seldom troubled himself with such sentiment, so to be polite, he finally said, "It is not an accident of ingredients. I take a personal hand in blending all the fixings myself in small batches every morning, just like I learned to do from my dear grandmother. I don't know how you do it, Biegler. I just know it tastes terrific," said Clem. "You're an amazing man, Biegler, a businessman and master baker extraordinaire. You always slay the biggest deer and catch the biggest fish," said Louis. The old Austrian, with a face flush with embarrassment, quickly retreated back to his corner, where he sat snugly in his booth with an unobstructed view of his saloon. He was a small man with graying, dark, combed, full head of hair. His dress was always impeccable, with a freshly cleaned suit and different tie, with a carnation in his lapel. "I'm kind of befuddled by some of the things he does around this place. Look at that bulletin board behind the bar, filled with those bounced checks from all those old deadbeat cowboys. Biegler doesn't seem to care much if those sorry-ass skinflints cheat him or not," said Joe. Louis smiled. "Oh, he just likes to have those curious fellers in the bar for the yarns they never seem to run out of." The jawing went on, getting more nonsensical as the many beers were consumed by Joe and Louis. Louis said, The devil is making us drink all this beer. He's trying to get us so he can snatch our souls in a few years, because the fact is that with care and prudence we might have 4 or 5 years left in our old worn-out bodies." For the reason of being drunk, Joe chose to disclose his rascality and offered the hypothesis, "Clem, you're too fat to make 5 years, that's for sure." "Now you're getting personal. Is that what you might call a beach ball under that shirt? Mr. Morchella, you come right out with it. With our fat bellies, we are all living on borrowed time, according to Doc Rickers, ain't we? We can see the end with that old light at the end of the tunnel, so they say." It was stirring to see the gathering of these tough and weathered old grizzled miners from Tuscarora talking mostly nonsense. These old guys had observed Nevada in their glorious youth and had slogged their way through her unmolested history and geography. These old gents have outlived their friends and most of their relatives. They have slept with the rattlers and lizards in the inhospitable desert and admired the same girls in their youth. They ate beans from the same pot and slept in the same tents, attended the same schools. It was touching for the other patrons to see these weathered old geezers banding together like a club for the sake of the hardships they have overcome and the dangers they have defeated. The best times were the old days, yet they were hopeful for a few more good days to come. The dinner and beer at the tavern was excellent and plentiful, but the pie was like no other. They had no wives to nag them for eating and drinking too much. Clem Winderweedle finished his pie and glanced at the old Vienna regulator clock on the wall. "That clock's wrong," he observed. "That clock never has the right time." No one responds. Finally, Joe said, "Winderweedle, you old buzzard, you're as flaky as that clock." Joe Selensky touches it, waits a moment, then touches it again, waits a few moments more, and wisely states, "Needs a good cleaning, no doubt. I'll find out what time it is." He went over to Beegler Schumbach's table, leaned down and said, as if he owned the place, "What time is it?" The low, raspy voice responded, "Is that you, Selensky?" "Yeah, it's me." "What's the matter?" "What time is it?" "Oh, I don't care. Why should you?" "I want to know what time it is." "Is that all? Calm yourself. It is 9:15, he said, taking out his pocket watch. "Thanks." He goes back to the table, beaming. "It's 9:15, as he resets the clock. "You got some place to go?" "Nope, except having a beer and talking a little about baseball or something important like that. I want to know who was the greatest baseball player ever," asked Joe. "Now, Joe, how many times are we going to go down that road? You know it's Mantle. Hands down, he was the best player that ever played the game, and I'll say that every time you bring that subject up," said Louis Morchella. "You're a broken record." "Why'd you ask, if you already knew what I'd say? I answered the question." Winderweedle said, "Remember back in '61 when Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris tried to break Babe Ruth's mark of 60 homers? They matched each other tit for tat. A few weeks before the season ended, Mantle got a bad hip after a doctor gave him a shot almost a month before the end of the season. It got infected, and his game went into the shitter. He sat on the bench at 54 home runs, while Maris went on and got his 61. Mantle would have broken that record." "Maris not only broke it," said Joe. "Look at his outfield play. It was so great, he made it look easy. I saw that guy catch a ball with a man on third and heaved it with his two-step throw on the fly to the catcher at home, and the runner had to hole up at third. It was great. Today's outfielders take 5 steps before throwing it 10 feet off line." "I ain't never going to win an argument with you." "Morchella, did you ever get into that cute little Mona's pants?" "Mona Polyolphin was her name, I believe." "I can't say, Joe. I don't blab about things like that, you know me." "Hey, that was a long time ago. I won't ever breathe a word of it. and there's hardly a soul around any more that even cares about that old lady. I saw her in Elko the other day. She still looked mighty good to me," said Joe. Louis followed with, "That sweet young lady was the loveliest thing at Elko High. Fine form features, her skin as pure as the driven snow, nimble, soft blue eyes with long arched lashes. She had the look of the innocent child and the gentleness of a lamb, a beautiful glowing face. Her attitude and movement was pure, graceful grace, and she also had a killer body." "You got into her pants," said Clem. "I think Buck Carnian, our wonderful quarterback, beat me to that." "So you got her after he did, huh?" inquired Joe, wide-eyed. "That guy thought he was God's gift to Elko High School and all the young ladies he could get his pecker into." They drink until they lost their sense of propriety. Sober Clem left first. The rest departed in due time. Clem Winderweedle woke up in bed the next morning with his clothes and boots still on. These were the little flaws that the old bachelors enjoyed, since there is no one around to notice. He just got up and went out prospecting in his normal fashion. When he left Tuscarora that morning at 10:30 a.m., he was fully confident that he would be back there again for the next night's gathering. The next evening at the tavern, the gang waited in vain for the appearance of their old friend. The good old boys were missing one of their own. "Where is that old peckerhead? Maybe he struck it rich," scoffed Louis. Joe said, "He wouldn't miss his pie. He must be lost and is eating his jackass." Louis interrupted with, "We don't need to worry about him starving with the blubber he's packing. I kind of miss that overbearing, bragging peckerhead. Hardly anything he don't know more about than anyone else." "That old son of a bitch is starting to piss me off. He better have himself a mighty good story when he shows up," scowled old Louis, with real concern in his expression. So the conversation went on about Winderweedle for the next few days, and their praise and admiration, along with great fear for their old buddy, increased as each day passed, and still no Clem. Then Babe, his burro, at last showed up, and everyone thought the worst. That afternoon the sheriff came in. He sighed disgustedly and said, "One Clem Winderweedle has been gone for 5 days, and no one knows his whereabouts. Am I correct so far?" "You're right about that. What are we going to do?" asked Joe. "I already called the rescue posse. Anyone here want to join up?" Beegler eagerly says, "No question. We're all raring and ready to go. We've already searched everything around here for poor old Winderweedle." Most all the local men joined the search party, and the sheriff delivered a rousing pep talk. "We will search the mountains, the valleys, the desert, and the forests. We will leave no stone unturned until we find our old buddy." He designated squads and divided quadrants on the maps. Everyone had their search area. They covered every square mile from Lone Mountain Station all the way to the Idaho border. They exhausted every plan and followed all possible clues. Finally, after almost 3 weeks, the sheriff said, "Well, men, we've done everything reasonably possible to find our old friend. I have to call the official search off." Everyone agreed that it was probably hopeless for their poor old friend. Winderweedle was deeply missed by his pals at their old rendezvous. There wasn't a kinder, gentler man alive. Sadness abounded. Their old friend's chair sat empty. A sad atmosphere lingered in the Teaselwood Canyon Tavern. They had a service for him on Tuesday, and scholarly Louis Morcella gave the eulogy. "The old vagabond is gone, and he was so beloved and respected by our community. He is in a place he loves, where Babe, his treasured jackass, left him. It is a natural death he always talked about, and poor Winderweedle died with his boots on. He gave up the ghost peculiarly, with none to soothe his dying agonies or proclaim it to the world. Departing life before his time in the due course of nature, he descended quietly. Now he will not be forgotten in a few days, or months, or years. Everyone will always speculate where his remains might be as we travel the desert." After the service, each man and woman shook Louis's hand and congratulated him on the fine speech. They ate lunch, and then in a short time began to drink champagne by the glass, and then by the bottle. Poor devils, they drank so much to honour Clem, the teetotaler, that they did not know where they were. Then the phone rang, and just the look on Beagler's face foretold the good news to come. He told them about a miracle. Winder Weedle was alive. The shock of the news was like a bolt of lightning across the sky. "He's in the Elko Hospital, brought in by a sheep-herder." The news turned them into a delirious, cheery crowd, drinking even more champagne. They had the good sense to wait to go see him until the next morning, after they all were sobered up a bit. When they arrived at the hospital, they found him out of intensive care, alert and talking. "Hey, old sidewinder, where the hell you been?" asked Louis. "I was lost on the Nevada desert," he said. "Only time I ever was lost in my life. A big dust storm came up, and I couldn't find Babe. He knew the way for sure. He probably went home. I ran out of grub. I was starving and out of water. That's your last gasp, you know, when you're out of water. You're doomed. My lips were so dry I could hardly talk. I would have ate old Babe if I could have found him. I was too weak to look for him. My old knotty hands were so calloused and dry I couldn't cinch up my belt to hold my pants up. I was out of water. My dried-up old eyelids folded over my eyes so I couldn't see, and I stumbled into some godforsaken badlands and couldn't find my way out. I wandered all day and all night in those badlands with my pants falling down. I got hit by a big dust devil, then I thought I was going east some place looking for water, then saw I'd gone the wrong way, stumbling, falling, and clawing for days out of my head. I fell into a deep ravine, and at last I just gave up and lay there to die. Wanted to be out of my misery and the terrible quiet, hunger and thirst I had. Yeah, I wanted to die. I was dreaming about eating the lemon pie. It tasted so good, and then all at once I heard a voice. It was the voice of a Basque sheep-herder. I looked up and saw a canvas bag dripping with water. I thought it was a mirage. I didn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't understand a word he said, and he couldn't understand me, but he saved my life. I would have died right there with the taste of that lemon pie in my mouth. "Well, you're looking good now," declared Joe. "Life is funny. Just when we think we're bad off, we hear a tale like yours." "Funny? Say, buddy, there's no joking about dying," Winder Weedle snapped. "Well, you've thinned down a heap, and it made you a bit grouchy, too. You'll be fighting the ladies off your back with that skinny body," hooted Joe. Toward the close of that memorable day, Joe and Louis immersed themselves in sweet conversation alongside their old buddy. They talked until Nurse Sue ran them out of his room. Then Joe and Louis had a serious talk with Dr. Brown about their friend. The doctor told them, "Poor old Clem. Probably will only make it at most a month or so. His innards are badly damaged due to the long time he went without nourishment, especially the lack of water." "Ain't there something you can do?" asked Louis. "I wish there was. He was out there too long." They left the hospital teary-eyed. They came back every day until Clem finally looked a little better. They told Nurse Sue and the doctor in private what they wanted to do. Clem had told them that he wanted to get out and do some prospecting and camping. "That'll be better than him laying here and dying in the hospital alone," Doc Brown told them. They went to Clem's room. "How about a piece of lemoniceboxpie?" Joe said as they walked in. "How did you know I was dreaming about eating that lemon pie?" He was beaming with delight. "Just a wild stab in the dark," said Louis. The next night, Nurse Sue sat behind the counter as Louis and Joe came in to get their friend. She calmly surveyed these guys, trying to make sense of what exactly these old codgers were made of. The thought of deserting these weak and worn-out humans never occurred to her. She could not help but feel great empathy for these poor old men's camaraderie. They saw Clem dozing in a wheelchair all dressed up. Joe put his hand on his shoulder and said, wake up, don't sleep your life away. We're going over to Madame LaRue's and get you back in shape on this glorious summer afternoon in Elko, Nevada. We got reservations. Come on, what do you say? Nurse Sadie says I gotta go out of here in a wheelchair. I'm ready to get out of this place. Let's go, said Clem with a gleam in his eye. Hey, old buddy, how would you like to go over to Madame LaRue's in Winnemucca, that new kitty store? Then we can go prospecting. That's the place everyone's been talking about, and you've been itching for. A very high-class cat house. Only wine and champagne are served. The ladies wear evening gowns, and you can stay for 3 hours. The sex and drinks are free for $100 entry, $200 for the whole night. It's so hot, you have to make reservations. They've got the best entertainment, musicians, dancers, singers, good stuff. It's our treat, said Louis. You don't have to convince me. I'm ready, said Clem. Well, Nurse Sadist, sure got you duded up. The doctors and all the nurses gave them a hearty, sad farewell, along with their blessings. That nurse was a tough one, but she took care of me. She's a nice lady. She told me to have a good time tonight at the Madame's. As they approached Winnemucca, they saw the new bordello, long before they got there, the tallest building in town. It looked like a very state-of-the-art Victoria mansion. They drove in just as it was opening at 7 p.m. That was unique for a bordello to have an opening and closing time. They were also closed Sunday evenings. They paid the $200 each so they can have all the girls and wine they want for the whole night. They were greeted warmly by a French madame at the door. Bonjour, mes amis. Bonjour. Just make yourself just like home. There was a man inconspicuously sitting in the corner, obviously a bouncer, a giant of a man who looked like he could handle just about any situation. The place had an air of luxury and comfort that the men had never seen before. 3 stories, 30 rooms, 5 parlors, and 3 ballrooms. The girls were dressed like Southern belles from the Gone with the Wind era. The 3 old grizzled men joined other customers. Each and all were clad in their best church wear. They went over to the table where they could enjoy champagne and watch the great old black quartet sing platters and ink-spot songs from the 50s. Joe said, "Ain't it great? The girls, all dressed up proper. I ain't ne'er seen nothing like it." "Me neither," Clem said. "I shouldn't stare, but as a matter of fact, I like staring." Louis's eyes brightened. "Really?" He watched a beautiful blonde lady who sat reading a book. He got up and walked over to her. "I'm Louis. Who are you?" Without looking up from her reading, she said, "I'm Cassie. Glad to meet you." Louis slowly put his hands on her breasts. She made no attempt to resist him. He brushed her left breast and she smiled. Using his finger, he started circling around and over the peaks of both breasts, first one, then the other, hardening the points through her fine lace dress. Cassie looked at old man Louis, smiled at him again, caressed his hand, said, "Come," and led him up the flight of steps to her waiting bed. Clem had eyes for a sensuous-looking regal lady with an air of mystery about her. She had dark, wavy hair, with striking blue eyes, sexy red lips, and a lightly freckled face. Without saying anything, she leaned down to him and kissed him. Her lips tasted of spearmint. He had never before been kissed by a lady of the evening. It's always against the rules. The young lady led him up the stairs and into her bedroom. He was eager to undress her, but she said, "No, you first." He stripped off his shirt, shoes, and socks. She helped him out of his trousers, and then she was rubbing her face on his boxers, and this stiffened him. He was pleasantly surprised at his own enthusiasm. She pulled his boxers down and offered him a wicked smile before going to work on him. She gripped him. He held her head, more in an effort to steady himself than anything else. "Thank goodness I've got a condom in my wallet," he thought. This was really happening, wasn't it? When she concluded, her oral kindness She moved him onto the bed. She crossed her arms and asked him to unbutton her dress. "My pleasure," and she stepped out of it slowly, exposing her shapely, pantyless round bottom and braless, firm young breasts. The lace caught on her pink nipples before they bounced free. She was a living portrait of his wildest dreams. Moving in a sensual slow motion, she proceeded to stand on the bed and gyrate, showcasing her carefully trimmed triangle. He felt like he was at his own private club. She laid down and turned to face him. He kissed her neck and shoulders, causing her to giggle in delight. Next, he played with her breasts, first one, then the other, and then he moved his hand to her stomach, gently touching her skin. She opened her bedside drawer, retrieving a condom, which she put on him expertly. He pulled her close as she opened up to him, and he was able to maintain a rhythmic motion to completeness. She kissed him, and he kissed her until he was breathless. They remained still, amorously exhausted. A woman and a man embraced one with the other in mutual satisfaction. A more pleasurable time Clem could not remember. He didn't even know her name. As they walked down the stairs, she carried herself gracefully and elegantly to a table of men. She was like a queen with a strange air of mystery about her, the most beautiful woman Clem had ever seen, especially after he got to know her so well. Clem was with a queen. The old king can still do it with a lady, he thought, as he walked in a pensive daze. He didn't even want to know her name. "What's wrong, Winderweedle?" asked Louis. "Nothing," he managed. As Louis napped in his chair, Clem walked over to the window and looked out on the town of Winnemucca, now sleeping peacefully, its silhouette soft and subdued, its glaring casinos bright in the night, joined the moonlit sky. In the hush, he could hear the rippling of water in the irrigation ditches and the whispering of the trees beyond the hill. Clem sat there napping a few hours. He awoke and looked up. As he did so, a star shot across the twinkling sky. Another, and then another. The episode suggested to him a good things, too, in spite of the slight little sharp pains he felt in his insides. The clock struck 2, and Louis spoke out. "Be at the church with the car at 3. The sleeper stirred uneasily and then awoke. "Are you there, Joe?" "Yeah. You was talking in your sleep." "I dreamed just now, guys. I thought that Cassie and I was getting married, and that the parson was there." "Who do you think it was?" "'Twas you, Clem." The guys laughed and seated themselves. "Thanks a million for bringing me over, boys. I can't remember when I had ever this much fun. I'm not as old as I thought I was." "I reckon so." "Hey, old guys, you think we gotta get going?" "Yeah, we got to, if we're gonna go camping for a couple of weeks and pick up some gold nuggets," said Louis. "We'll have to find some mighty big nuggets to top this evening. I'll never forget." They loaded up the old Chevy pickup with supplies and headed for the hills. With a couple of thumps and a clatter, they were back on the road again, headed for Nevada's high country to get some gold. They broke camp early and ate some bacon, eggs, and spuds. The anxious gold-seekers, early at work, ceased their labors and leaned upon their picks to listen to the romantic sounds of the songbirds tootling away in the rosy sunrise. It became more and more difficult for Joe and Louis as they saw their friend's enthusiasm waning day by day. They quit asking him if he wanted to go home or to the hospital because it just seemed to irritate him. So to maintain their good nature and humor, they talked about the old days, and it always brought a smile to his face when they reminisced about Madame Leroux's. They could tell by the look on their old friend's face what lied in store. "There's not a chance in a million to save him," Joe said, pointing to Clem, who was down the hill, leaning woefully on his pick, staring at the ground. "But he's putting up a good fight there," he added. Clem Winderweedle, their old and dear friend, was looking real bad. "You want us to take you back to the hospital? You don't look like you're feeling too well, old buddy." "No, I don't want to go nowhere. I'm out here in the place I love. This is where I want to be. I don't think there's much more they could do for me at the hospital," he replied with a pallid face and twitching limbs. The tears rose to their eyes, but they hid them from Clem. The guys slept very little. In the morning, looking into each other's faces, they read their friend's fate. Neither spoke. But Louis, accepting the position of the stronger, drew near and placed his arm around Clem's shoulder. They kept this attitude for the whole day. That night, a storm came and the water invaded the tent. Toward morning, they found themselves unable to feed Clem. He couldn't get out of bed, as the embers from the campfire slowly went cool and dark. "Bury me right here. I already had one funeral. That's enough for any man. Just don't make a big fuss over me." "Whatever you want, Clem," Louis said, trying to hide his teary eyes, and he then pointed and continued. "How about under that big tree? You can see the whole valley." "That'd be great," said Clem. He then turned his face away and died quietly. The wind stopped, as if to honor this old man that so loved the Nevada desert. At the head of the ravine, the largest tree around, they dug with shovels and picks and buried their old pal where he wanted to be. Then they chipped bark out of an area of the big tree, and Louis skillfully carved the following verse. "Shaded by this mighty tree lies the body of our friend Clem Winderweedle, who never struck it rich. He was richer in friends than he could ever have been striking a mother lode." The end. An old man picked me up hitchhiking when I was 18 in the Nevada desert. He was a fascinating character with lots of tales. This story was influenced by his fables. I enjoyed his stories, true or not. He was a slow ride in his old Model A, but he made up for it with his interesting tall tales. Michael. James W. Buckner Lemon Ice Box Pie Recipe. 2 egg yolks. 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. Half cup squeezed lemon juice. 1 prepared graham cracker crust. 3 egg whites. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. 4½ teaspoons of white sugar. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. In a large bowl, beat egg yolks and sweetened condensed milk with an electric mixer until doubled in volume. Gradually beat in the lemon juice while continuing to mix. Pour lemon mixture into graham cracker crust. In separate clean bowl, beat egg whites with vanilla extract until soft peaks form. Gradually beat in sugar and continue beating egg whites and form peaks with spoon. Bake for 15 to 20 minutes in the preheated oven until golden brown. Serve cool.